to our next session with the one and only Mike Taylor. This is very exciting for me, having been a long time follower and stealer of useful things from him. It was nice to meet in person and have a quick chat before going live. Mike, thanks so much for making the time to be here today. And well, people aren't here to listen to me, so I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. The stage is yours.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tom. So super excited to be here and be part of this awesome event. And I know that 30 minutes goes pretty quick, so let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Um, so quick note up front. So everything that I'm going to talk about, everything I'm going to show you today is available on my website. If you want the slides, if you want the links and resources, my email address, contact information, I'll give it all to you. I'll give you a chance at the end as well to get that. So don't feel like you have to furiously scribble notes. The first thing I'd kind of like to start with, I always like to ask this question and see what kind of answers we get. If you could use the chat and kind of share, if there's one thing you could steal from the marketing department, what would that be? There's usually at least one or two things that pop immediately into most people's minds. And just take a second to give people, and Tom, budget is one of those top things that usually goes right to the top of that list for a lot of folks. So that's a really good one. Curious what others might have. I know I've had some favorites over the years. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So think about that. Drop it in the chat here as we go, and we'll come back and hit some of these things. Resources, another really good one, Susan. Thanks for adding that in there. Graphics, that's another one. Money, budget. Emmett, copywriters. That's one of my favorites, actually. I think writing is a superpower, and marketers are really good at that. So first question you might be thinking about is, well, why are we looking at marketing? What's so great about marketing, and why do they have stuff that we want to steal? And we might not realize it, but L&D and marketing, we have a lot of things in common. One primary goal is we're both trying to get people's attention, and then we're trying to help them think and act in new ways. So really, really similar goals that we're both trying to achieve. But I would venture to say that the approaches those two different fields use are very, very different. So imagine you're at work one day, and the big boss comes in and says, hey, we've got a new project. We need to sell more hamburgers. Maybe we work for a fast food company. We've got to sell more hamburgers. How are we going to do it? If you think about it, most typical traditional L&D departments might come up with something that sort of looks like this: very factual, very informative, educational. And if we compare that, if we take that same goal and that same project and we walk down the hallway to the marketing department, they might come up with something that looks a little bit more like this. So I'll ask you here, what is the difference between these two approaches? What are the things that really jump out here when you're comparing these two approaches? And then while you're doing that, why are they so different? So I'm really curious here. What are some of the big differences? Why do you think the differences are so stark? Yeah, Olga, I that's a really good comment, but I think great marketers actually do try to help. I spent a couple of years as Articulate community manager, and one of the things that they sell, one of their best selling tools, is helping people. So I think if you're a really good marketer and not kind of a pushy, slimy marketer, I think there's a difference there. That's a really good comment. So differences here: visual impact, minimal written information, flashy and enticing, kind of dull, kind of boring. Yeah, really, really good. We could probably break that down and keep going, but since we're kind of short on time, one of the things we'll get into today is, there's a reason that you don't see bullet points in advertising. And that's one of the things of the three that we're going to talk about that I think L&D should be stealing from the marketing department. There are a lot more than three things we're stealing from our marketing friends. Three is what we have time for today. So that's what we're going to get into. The first one is marketers speak to the lizard brain, or to our primal brain. And what that means is there's two types of thinking. So humans have two types of thinking. The one that intuitively jumps to most people's mind, if we start thinking about the brain and cognition and all that stuff, most people naturally tend to think of this conscious logical side. But we also have a subconscious emotional type of thinking, which is also at play in all of this stuff we're talking about here. If you want to dig into the details, there's a really fantastic book by Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for some of this type of work. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. He calls it type 1 and type 2 thinking, but it's the same thing we're talking about here, conscious and subconscious. So I want to take a quick moment here, do a quick poll, just do it in chat, just type in the numbers. How much human behavior is driven by that logical thinking, by the logical mind? So 0%, there's no logic involved. 100%, everything's 100% logical. Where do you think we fall on that spectrum? And just put a number in the chat there. We'll see where people. 15%, 20%, we're on the low end of logic here. Sarah says 2. Obviously, it's probably not exactly the same for everyone. 10%, 10%. All right, so not awesome. So really, there's some research in science that says about 5% or actually less of human cognition is experienced consciously. So what that means is over 95% of our brain activity is happening. We're not aware of it. It's in our subconscious. And what that tells us is we don't think as much as we think we think. What happens oftentimes is we're making decisions and taking actions and behaviors based on subconscious thinking. And then what we do is we backfill it with the logic after the fact. So we buy the expensive red sports car on impulse and maybe subconscious factors, and then we backfill it, and then we give the reasoning after the fact. So let's kind of come back to this idea of the two types of thinking, and let's do a little bit of a comparison here between these two. First of all, the conscious logical type of thinking, it's evolutionarily newer, so it evolved over time. We didn't have that originally. It's weaker. It gets tired easily. It's effortful. So you think about doing math problems, that's the conscious type of thinking. I know for me, it's really hard and makes me really tired. The subconscious emotional type thinking, it's older. We've had this much, much longer, sort of evolutionarily. It's dominant. It's always on. It's automatic. This is thinking we can't turn it off even if we wanted to. The conscious thinking part of our minds can process about 40 bits per second. If we compare that to the subconscious thinking that's happening, 11 million bits per second. So you can kind of see here, that's a pretty massive relative strength when it comes to subconscious versus conscious. So how does all of that work? So our subconscious mind, essentially, it's kind of like this supercomputer, and it comes loaded with a database of all these pre-programmed behaviors. The fascinating thing to me is all those pre-programmed behaviors, we get those by the time that we're 6 years old. That was pretty impactful for me when I was reading this research, And so the question that I would ask, if we've acquired all those by the time we're 6 years old, how would you design differently for a 6-year-old? So think about a recent project, or maybe something that some learning that you've taken recently. How would you do it differently, or what would you change if it was for a 6-year-old instead of an adult? And Olga, I it's a really great point there. Thinking is it is hard, and our brains are constantly looking for shortcuts. So that's a large underlying reason why a lot of this stuff works the way that it does. So yeah, Susan, great. Keep it simple. Excellent way if we're going to do something for 6-year-olds. Small segments, absolutely, Shannon. Thank you. A couple more seconds here. Get maybe one or two more answers. Consider the programs, they don't come preloaded. Simple, metaphors, allegories, yep, absolutely. Usually people say colors, simple language, bright, fun, absolutely. So my follow-up question is, of all of those things we talked about, which of those do you not like? I think most people like, as Ren says, more pictures, less text, simple, colorful. And so really, I think when we design learning, we're not designing for kids or adults, we're designing for humans. And I think marketers do this a little bit better as a whole, as a field, probably than what we do on the whole. And really, to kind of summarize here, we're living in this really stimulating, overcrowded, distracting world. But the thing for us to remember is we're still doing all that with the brains that we evolutionarily evolved tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago, whatever the case might be. And so that's the first important step. The second thing that I want to share is marketers really are aware and know about the importance of first impressions. So if you take a second or a few seconds and think about what's the last learning experience that you had, or maybe what's the most common learning experience you've had over the course of your life, whether it's work, school, whatever the case might be. My guess is there's probably a pretty high percentage of them that started off some version of this. And what marketers understand is they know when we see, hear, feel, or experience in our first encounter, that initial experience colors everything that comes after it. So we have this automatic subconscious reaction. So back to that sort of primal brain that we were talking about. And that automatic subconscious reaction influences how we perceive the content's relevance, its credibility, and it even impacts our perception of the usability. We like to say that we would never judge a book by its cover, but actually we do. We can't help it. We're hardwired that way. And these unconscious likes and dislikes, they're happening insanely fast. It's happening before our conscious mind even know what's happening, what we're responding to. So there's been some studies, multiple studies here. So in fractions of a second, this is happening, these subconscious influences, down to 30 thousandths of a second, which we can hardly even recognize consciously. And so I don't know if anybody else here has ever had a project. They say, oh, it doesn't matter what it looks like. Just get it out the door. Just get it out the door. And that's really not true. Looks, they do matter. That first impressions are 94% related to the design of what we're evaluating. So it really does matter. What it looks like is important. It could be really fantastic, but if it looks bad, people are going to downgrade the credibility, the trust. Like we saw earlier, they'll even see it as less usable. So there's no such thing as no design. If you've not spent any time or thought designing something, it's probably bad, because everything is designed. It's just a matter of how good it is. And the alternative to good design is always bad, right? There's no other alternative. There's no undesign. So the second thing here, marketers recognize that good design is a smart investment. The third thing that marketers know, that maybe not all of us know, or maybe we know it, but we're not really so quick to admit it, is marketers know that nobody pays attention. I know I'm guilty of this myself. So let's talk about this a little bit. I want to show you an ad. This is by Skoda. It's an Eastern European car company. And I'm going to play a video with sound, so let me know if we have any issues with that coming through. I'm going to play you, I don't think it's about 30-second clip, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So let me know in the comments if we have any issues with sound. So here we go.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look?
All right. Who caught all the changes that happened over the course of that clip? Who caught anything that changed? Super extra 1,000 bonus points if you caught more than, yeah, it was jittery, right? Yep, absolutely, Kuba. So there were some changes that happened beyond just the jitteriness. Ren is the sharpest. Okay, we got a couple things here. Anybody else? Okay, so some people will catch you this. This is good. Yep, awesome. You guys are sharper than every other group I've ever shown this to. So I don't know if you've seen it before, but you guys are catching more stuff than most people. That's awesome. So I'm gonna play the other half of this ad and see if there are any changes that you didn't catch. So let's do the second half. Here we go.
Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so. So there we have it. Proof that the new Skoda Fabia is truly attention-stealing.
So did anybody miss any changes? I love this ad. I've seen this ad, I don't know, probably 100, maybe multiple hundreds of times, and I don't know if I'm just attentionally blind or what, but like I still can't seem to catch all of the changes. There is Catherine. The original video that sort of illustrates this concept was called The Invisible Gorilla. If you've never seen that one, Google Invisible Gorilla. There were 2 groups of people, one group in white shirts, one group in black shirts. They tell you to focus on the white shirts. A gorilla literally walks through the middle of the screen, beats its chest, and walks off the side. And over 50% of the people don't see it. And so if you haven't seen Invisible Gorilla, that's a good one to go check out. What they both illustrate is this concept of inattentional blindness. So we have this intuition that people will notice something that's obvious, like a gorilla in the middle of the screen, something so distinctive, and our intuition is consistently wrong about that. So to me, it's really important reminder that we put out things and we think it's so obvious nobody can miss it, and it's really not necessarily true. So it's not very difficult for important information to get overlooked. And that's a really important thing, because I think we've all probably fell victim to that at some point or another. And so really, without that initial attention, nothing else matters, because if we don't have their attention, they're not going to intake anything anyway. So what type of things does that lizard brain or our primal brain, our subconscious mind notice? I'm going to give you some hints here with the icons. There's three big things. If you just base your thoughts off the icons, that'll give you a clue. If you want to, anybody wants to venture a guess of what are the 3 main things that our subconscious primal brain pays attention to? Yep, Sarah's got 2 right off the bat. So food, can I eat it? Danger, will it eat me? I think the other one's probably the easiest. It is social, Sarah. So really the big things: can I eat it? Can I have sex with it? Can I, keep the species alive? Will it kill me? Now, I don't know how you work that into your training and your learning design, but if you can, let me know, because I really want to know how you do it. You will get attention. Really, it's probably more common, like, what are the benefits? Is it enjoyable? What are the consequences? So what we're talking about is marketers are people focused, and their designs are informed by the knowledge of the audience and presented in a way that connects with them. There's a tendency, I think, oftentimes for L&D people to be content focused as opposed to people focused. And here's the thing with that. So this is maybe not so much of a big news flash, but nobody wants to read your stuff. Nobody wants to read my stuff. It's nothing personal. Nobody wants to read anything. There's a really great short little book by Stephen Pressfield, who's a pretty well-known author. And that's the title: Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit, Other Tough Love Truths to Make You a Better Writer. But I think it's really relevant to the topics that we're talking about. Yeah, Tom, it is a really fantastic book. And there's 2 things that everybody should do. The first is streamline your message. Focus it, pare it down, make it simple, make it clear, make it as easy as possible to understand. Places I used to work at, we called it unpacking. We'd be in meetings. I think we need to unpack this a little bit more. So streamline your message. The second thing he says you need to do is make its expression fun or sexy or interesting or scary or mysterious. What we're talking about here is emotion, right? Make it emotional so people are crazy not to read the rest. And if you do those 2 things, apply that to everything you do, you're going to be successful. And I would add a third thing that supports both of the first 2. If you make it visual, that will help you streamline your message, and it will also help you with the emotional component. So if we think about it, this is sort of the money slide of this whole session. If you can streamline your messaging, add an emotional element, and use visuals to do for each of those first 2 things, you're probably going to be pretty successful at whatever you're doing, whatever that is. So just a quick recap here, and then we can take questions and have a little discussion. The 3 things to steal from marketing that we talked about. Remember, the human mind doesn't run on logic any more than a horse runs on petrol. So speak to the lizard brain, speak to the primal brain. Marketers are good at that. The first second with your content might matter more than all the seconds that follow. Key point there is if there are any. So if it looks bad and people go away, they don't ever get to your great content. So make a great first impression, invest in good design. Anything that doesn't capture our attention might as well not exist. So really grab and hold their attention. It's not really safe to assume that you have it. I know I was guilty of this early in my career. I just said, oh, it's a required course. They have to do it. I have to have their attention. Not so much. So that's the 3 things I think that L&D should steal. If you want a copy of the slides, my contact information, just drop your email on that page. You can hit reply if you think of a question after we're done here today. Happy to do that. That's when my best questions comes, as soon as I log off of one of these things. And Tom, did I miss any questions, or anybody have any questions or comments?
Don't think we missed any, no. But we've got maybe a few minutes, so if anyone's got a burning question that they simply must ask, now is the time. But it's really interesting. So thank you for that. There were some scary stats in there, and it was lovely to see the Skoda ad. I've not seen that in a while.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. There's a lot of stuff that we can steal from ads. Storytelling is a big one. There's a really great Subaru ad that's only 2 words, and I use that as an example of the power of story and how much more influential it is and memorable than like facts and figures, stuff like that. Could talk about this stuff for days and days.
Absolutely. Well, I say you share a lot of it fairly regularly anyway, so if you don't already follow Mike, it's well worth it. You'll always get interesting stuff.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm pretty findable and accessible online. So, if you have questions or something doesn't make sense, or there's something missing in the resources, I'm pretty easy to find. Everything here is on my website, and this link will get you everything specifically related to this. I will never spam you, and I have nothing to sell, so I'm not selling anything. I've got a newsletter that I send every Friday. If you want to sign up to that, that's free. That's all on my website as well. So no, will not abuse your trust nor your email address.
I can confirm that is the case. It is information to be trusted. Fantastic. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. Loads of really positive comments and thank yous coming through. And thank you everyone in the audience for getting involved, for being in the chat, and for staying with us. Our next session, running 5:15 to 5:45 GMT, so in about 15 minutes time, is actually only on the Zoho platform. What would have been on the stage here has actually been cancelled this afternoon. So if you follow the link in the schedule, you'll be able to go and join us there for the e-learning rudder, 6 tips for successful e-learning development. And then we're back to dual channels after that for the rest of the day. Thank you all so much, and we shall see you soon.